Welcome to the Worship Keys YouTube channel. My name is Carson Bruce. So glad you're here. We talk all things music theory, gear, industry, and ministry for your worship keys playing. If this episode is beneficial for you or you have any questions as you continue to watch, feel free to comment below, and I'd love to hear any feedback that you have along the way. So let's get into today's episode. Today, I am joined by Colby Davis. How you feeling, man? How you doing?
Feeling good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, bro.
Good to be, with you again in your presence.
So. Oh my gosh. No. So Colby and I met back in college days. So I'm a little older than Colby. I met him on my way out as he was coming into Jacksonville State University in Alabama. And right now we're in your church office.
Yes.
And this office is a really cool vibe, like got some cool bulb lights in here and little lamps and like cool study-ish area, cool desk over there. And behind you, man, there's a sign. It is you can see it if you're watching on YouTube, but tell us about this little sign behind you, bro.
Yeah, it's a cool little thing I picked up. I wanted this office to be a space that I could go to and just kind of get rid of all the other distractions in my life, because everywhere else I go is just loud. Mm-hmm. And so, juggling everything that I do, being able to come here, a couple of days out of the week and just kind of be able to focus and to really be able to resonate with the Lord and That's to good. Pray over, the music I want to choose for a Sunday morning, things like that. That's also why there's no fluorescent lighting in here. I get headaches, real bad headaches.
Right.
I can't focus when that happens. So this kind of vibe is where I kind of thrive.
I love that, man. I love that. So Colby Davis is worship leader here in Sonoya, Georgia, which is right outside of Peachtree City.
Yeah.
And it should be no surprise that every single person actually drives a golf cart to church here. No, I'm just kidding. Not at all.
We do. We got golf cart parking spots out there for some people.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I love it. If you've ever been to Peachtree City or surrounding areas, you know that golf carts are almost as frequent as normal cars around here.
It's a culture shock. And you can be, I think, like 14 years old and drive one on your own.
That's fun.
So all the schools just have them lined up.
Right.
It's weird to see because I didn't grow up that way.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, me neither, man. Well, today we'll be talking about MainStage, which is actually an application you can use within a MacBook for keys sounds. But Colby, talk us through a little bit about your keys journey.
So I, grew up just singing. That was my entire thing, 4th grade talent shows, 5th grade talent shows, things like that.
There you go.
I really started enjoying just singing in general.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. But then, 7th grade rolled around and I saw all my friends in chorus singing and playing piano. And I was man, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. So I tried to learn myself and was terrible at it. So I ended up begging my parents, please, can I get piano lessons? Please, please, please. And I think at the time I was taking vocal lessons and they said I had to choose. So of course I was like, I want to do piano. So I chose piano. I took lessons for maybe 3 months and didn't like it. Yeah. I didn't like reading music. It was not my favorite thing.
Right.
I couldn't figure out how to do the left and right hand thing by looking at the notes on a page.
Right.
That's not how I learn, I guess. So, I'm a kinesthetic learner, not really a visual learner. Mm-hmm. So me just kind of getting here and figuring things out on my own is how I do the best playing the keys. And that also translates into worship, which is about the time I transitioned into my home church back in Douglasville. At the time, it was called One Community Church. And I started playing keys for them. We were actually in a movie theater and just transitioning into the old conference center in downtown Douglasville.
Yeah.
And I started playing keys for them. They taught me a lot, learning how to not just hit block chords and all of that, and try to add a little bit of flair and ambiance to the worship sound to make it sound fuller.
Yes.
And I learned a lot through that, and then everything else was really just learning by ear and listening to songs over and over again and trying to mimic the piano parts exactly because that's how I wanted to be.
Right.
And, then getting to the point where I was around college where, meeting you freshman year and learning, through our Engage program there at JSU, kind of learning how to fill in those gaps during Engage worship while not being too encroaching on the main element of worship.
Absolutely.
That's my favorite part of it, is just filling in that space to where you can just close your eyes, you can pray, you can talk to the Lord, and it sounds like a really, really peaceful place to be.
That's awesome.
And that's what I thrive for when I play piano. So nothing too crazy, nothing like that, just worship.
I love it, bro.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I just want to kind of get into this discussion. I'm going to get my phone out too to kind of go over some notes. But the discussion of hardware versus software keys. Many of you that are listening, you play on a Nord or a motif and you're using those keyboard sounds. And then some of you guys, you like what we're doing right now in your office, Colby. We have a MacBook right here, and the MacBook is the engine for the sounds of your keyboard. So today, this is the first ever episode that we're talking about sound design. And sound design is so important. Can you talk a little bit about that, Colby, of what we decide upon as far as sounds on a keyboard, how important that is specifically within worship?
I mean, it's very important. I just got this software maybe 3 years ago. And before that, I had to focus on the sounds that my keyboard provided. I wasn't using a MIDI controller. I was using a Roland Juno DS-X8, and I was using the internal sounds, trying to figure out which sound sounded the best. But you can only do so much with the preloaded sounds on a keyboard, right? I don't have much experience with Nords. I know you have more experience than I do, but I know there's a lot of buttons on those things. And you can figure out how everything works, but it's just the ease of being able to go into a software like this and to be able to fine tune everything just like that.
Absolutely.
It makes the entire process so much less stressful.
Absolutely.
And to where you can add more pad in the areas you feel you need to fill silence. You can add less pad, more reverb, less reverb. It's so much easier than what I used to do. I think it was setting 4 on the Roland I used. It was called like warm Vox or something, and it was a piano with a little pad behind it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I was like, man, it's not enough, and sometimes I was like, man, it's too much.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love MainStage so much.
It's awesome, man. So I'm going to bring up 4 reasons why to use software instead of hardware. Now, we're going to have episodes on hardware as well, talk about different keyboards and sounds, but personally, I am a software keyboard fan. Now, maybe I'll get some hate for that. And I know there's definitely reasons to use hardware, and people use it all the time in the touring world for sure. But specifically within church settings where maybe you'll have volunteers and maybe you're getting some of your keys players. So like you're a worship leader, you might have someone else on keys if you're on acoustic guitar. How do you get them set up in a good place where they don't have to learn the Nord in and out, right? You find these patches within MainStage, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this today, but here are 4 reasons why you should use software instead of hardware, and 4 reasons why you should specifically use MainStage, and I'll just go over these 4, boom, 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 and then we'll talk about them, okay?
Okay.
First reason, I think, is because it's overall less equipment. Second reason is more possibilities for customization. Third reason is sound design anywhere and everywhere, just from your laptop or iPad. Fourth reason, more reliable. Now, the more reliable can be debatable. Let's talk about that number 1 there, the first reason why to use software instead of hardware when we're talking about key stuff. Overall, less equipment, man. Colby, talk through your equipment right here in front of us.
Yeah, so we have the Arturia Keylab 61 here, which it looks like a regular piano, but it's just a MIDI controller. Yeah. So it has no internal sounds whatsoever, and it just connects to the computer and connects to whatever software you're using, whether that's Logic, Ableton, or MainStage, which is what we're talking about today.
Right.
It's just one cable that goes straight into the computer, and there's one cable that goes out of the computer to plug into whatever DI you're using, where your keys typically plug into. It's a lot less work to set up, and also a lot less clunky.
Yes.
Because my regular, like I talked about the Roland earlier, that thing weighs a ton.
Yeah.
A ton. And to lug that thing around, it takes a toll.
Right.
I've hurt my back a couple times doing it. Not gonna lie. All the Sundays and Mondays back in college, trying to take it out, put it back in. I got this thing, and I mean, I could throw this thing and up in the air and catch it again, and it's not gonna do anything.
Right.
They're much more durable, and I really enjoy the compactability of it.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, this thing's really small. I actually have in the car right now, I have the 88 version of this, the fully weighted version. So if you're like traditionalists and you love the fully weighted, which I'm right there with you guys. If y'all want that, need that for your playing, they still have an 88 version. And if you're not traveling a lot, it's great for that too with the 88 version. But I love this. It's just a MIDI controller. And this specific Arturia Keylab is really cool. There's also other versions that are really good MIDI controllers as well. But what I love about this, got the mod wheel, got the pitch bend. Basically, you have a transport control center. You have a DAW control center, so you can control your digital audio workstation by pressing play, record, stop, going back, scrolling. If you're on Logic or Pro Tools, you can use that transport button, or Ableton, right? There's a cool little knob here. You can dial up some presets there and go through the knob and to control your software. And then there's a whole fader bank, which is really cool. Now, a lot of people like the Korg Nano controller. So this one already has faders and these control knobs right here, which is really cool. A MIDI controller can basically control everything that's in your MacBook, your iPad. So yeah, that first reason, just overall less equipment, you can get something that's smaller and do more with it. But beyond that, so yeah, we're talking about this is your personal keyboard, but say for example, if you're hitting the road and you need to fly somewhere, right? Like you're flying to California, right? And you're going to go play a set. What Colby can do right here, what I can do, what you guys can do too, as well as a software keys person, you dial in your sounds on your computer exactly how you want it. You pack it up in your little book bag. You know, you have your charger for your MacBook. You have maybe your adapter and your MIDI cable. You might have an interface as well if you want to, or just a cable that goes out of your headphone jack. Interface is better preamps and better sound. But anyway, you just get those few things, put it in your backpack. No keyboard, no MIDI controller. Go fly to California. Then all Colby has to do is just open up his laptop and turn it on, and his sounds are right there.
Yeah.
And you just have to plug into another person's keyboard. So if you're playing at someone else's church, you don't have to bring your own keyboard. Most keyboards have a MIDI out. So if you just get the MIDI output of that, start going, you're good. 20, 30 years ago, with the keyboards that they had at that time, might not would have worked as well. Yeah. But in today's world, MIDI works for so many of the keyboards, you know what I mean?
I mean, even some older ones. I mean, my first church I started playing piano at, I think it was a Yamaha, and that thing was ancient. I mean, I think it had a floppy disk drive on it.
I know.
But lo and behold, it's got a USB out.
Wow.
Same thing, same cable I'm literally using for this thing that was made recently.
Wow.
I mean, that keyboard I think was from early 2000s.
Amazing.
And it still had the option to be able to plug it into a computer and use it as like a glorified MIDI controller.
Amazing.
So it's very, very versatile.
Yes,
very versatile.
Absolutely. If you're a hardware keys only type person, if you're attached to your keyboard as the engine and I gotta have my keyboard to play everything, it really can constrain you a little bit because you're like, oh, I got to bring my specific Nord or my specific Yamaha, whatever. And thing is, with Yamahas, with Nords and other keyboard brands, you can actually load in outside source to your keyboard. I don't know if you knew this, but you can go to the software or whatever, and you can load in sounds to your Nord, to your Yamaha from the internet, from Nord's side or whatever, and upload updated sound libraries into your keyboard. So that's a cool customization. When you become too attached to your hardware, I think it can come back to bite you.
It definitely can. Yeah. And I've fallen victim to that too, because I'm a very adaptable person until it comes to the specific hardware that I use. Like if I find something that works, I don't want to change it because you don't fix what's not broken.
Exactly.
And I, with that Roland, like I loved doing it, and I had found my ways around some of the issues I had talked about earlier with the different constraints with using just that keyboard direct out. And I was kind of hesitant when you had brought up, MainStage to me. I was like, it looks cool, but like this works. This works. Why would I want to change? And then it's like as soon as I do it, it's like, whoa, it's a whole new world.
Yes.
I mean, I was that way with my phone too. I was a big Android user. And then all of a sudden, people were like, iPhone. I'm like, nah, iPhones aren't that cool. And now everything music related, you can airdrop to your computer. You can make all your files sync up perfectly.
It's amazing.
It's awesome. So I really do, encourage you guys, if you want to take that next step, or you're scared to take that next step, I mean, just do it. Because it works out in the long run, and it's a lot of fun to use this kind of software on a computer to get these kind of sounds.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, when they hear software, they think, oh, complicated, right?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that experience when you first started going from your, what keyboard did you have again? Was it a Roland?
A Roland Juno DSX.
I remember when you used to play that thing.
Dude, I still play it sometimes too. It still works with MainStage at the same time.
Well, there you go. Well, take us through that. Like when you transitioned, what were you afraid of faster?
I was afraid that it was just going to break.
Okay.
Because when I hear software, I do think scary. I think what if something happens to my computer and it just breaks? What if there's some kind of software update? What if I forget to put my computer in do not disturb mode and Siri goes off in the middle of a service? Like that's happened before. That happened when we were at Double Oak with Wes. He had his, it was so funny, but it's funny when it's not you.
Right.
And then it's you, you're like, oh no. So I never wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
Ever. And it actually happened a couple of times too when I was first, getting used to how MainStage operated. Like it takes a while for the audio output to change. Every single setting you go and change, it takes a second.
Yeah.
So I had to learn, like you have to plug in the headphone adapter first before you open up MainStage. That way it's not reverting the audio output to like your internal MacBook speakers. It's honestly just using it over and over again to where you figure that out, to where you don't have as much of a delay.
Absolutely.
And then I think the other thing, I had everything on an SSD at first instead of like a external SSD instead of the internal one on my MacBook.
Yeah.
And I
remember that.
It was always super slow, and I had no idea why, because I'm not. I like to say I'm a tech person, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm not that much of a tech person. Yeah. And apparently I wasn't using a Thunderbolt cable. I was using just a regular USB-C cable, and that's why it kept breaking, and it took forever.
Okay.
And so finally I figured that out. I figured that out recently too. After I moved everything to the internal SSD, I was at a recording studio, and I said, man, this thing just isn't working. He looked at my cable. He said, dude, that's not a Thunderbolt cable.
Oh,
I was like, what do you mean? So he gave me another cable. I thought my SSD was like broken.
Wow.
I paid all this money, whatever. And finally I got the new cable and it works great. So now I can load in sounds like it's nobody's business, just on my computer. But it did take a little bit of an adjustment, and it was a little scary at first.
Yes.
But now I've got it on lock. After one or two times, you figure it out.
That's important for people to hear, because so many people are where you were, where you're not using software and you're stuck on that same preset for that Roland, grand piano, warm grand piano with a little bit of Vox pad stuff. Okay, so keyboards have tons of sounds, right? Nord is obviously an incredible brand that has incredible great sounds. So is a Yamaha Motif. Other keyboard brands out there, Roland has some great stuff. There's a lot of brands out there that have great sounds, but when you're talking about specifically for worship, sometimes you're narrowed down to like 5 good ones, right? And you're like, man, what can I do? Now, granted, if you get someone who really knows that keyboard in and out, they could really work some magic. But sometimes with some cheaper keyboards, you might have 100 sounds, but 20 of them might be synths, and this might be horns or strings or other things that you're not really going to use as much. And so to mix and match those, specifically as far as the combination, there's so many more combinations and customizations that you can do on software, which is reason number 2, is this overall customization and individualization. If 10 people have a Nord Stage 3 and they're all with the same type of piano sounds, no matter how many different piano sounds that they have in that keyboard, there's still only that amount. But with MainStage, there's thousands, because there's so many companies that build these patches. You can make your own as well. And so I would argue like you can actually have more customization when you're using software like MainStage. So then number 3, the sound design anywhere and everywhere. David with Sunday Sounds, he did a YouTube video not too long ago about how when he was flying on the way to play at a church in Colorado, he was still dialing in his sounds, but he could do that on the airplane because he had his iPad with him, and he brought it out and he could just play on the keyboard there. He saw what to do on the fly, no pun intended, but like literally flying on the airplane, he was designing his sound library.
Yeah.
Right there, which is incredible.
That's awesome.
What you can do on MainStage, you don't have to have the huge 88 keyboard in front of you to design the sounds. You could literally go home and go sit on your couch or go out and about and be on the go with your laptop or iPad and design the sound through Sunday Sounds.
Yeah, and I mean, even Sunday Sounds, it doesn't even have it registered in here to technically go to the full 88 keys when it's a preset patch. So
right.
I mean, yes, you can do stock sounds and use the full length of the keyboard, but if you want to use the specific sounds it has, you only need the 61 keys. So I don't need to go past this. And you can get so many sounds with a lesser of a setup. Absolutely.
And then the 4th reason why, software over hardware, which both of them are great, I love it, but while we're talking about software today specifically, 4th reason is it's more reliable. Now, this is debatable, and it is more of the seesaw of the one. It's not as stable of a reason because, as you said, you're scared, is my MacBook going to crash or whatever? Okay, so I'll tell you about my first ever MacBook.
I remember it, too.
Do you remember this?
Is it the 2010 one?
It was, yes, it was
the
2010.
The one you kept changing out the parts and stuff.
Exactly,
Till you couldn't do it anymore.
2010 MacBook. I mean, this thing, I can't remember if it was 2 or 4 gigabytes of RAM.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. I think it was 4, and then my buddy changed it out for 8 later. So it was double, which was like, wow, it's hard to do anything without at least 16 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
Right? And I had this computer, 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I was running MainStage with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, nothing else was up on my computer. It was just MainStage. And it never crashed, thank the Lord. Like, it never crashed on me. Actually, it has a place it can display your CPU meter. Like, if you go into the edit section, which we'll do here in a little bit, you can actually have a CPU reader. And I remember when I had that 8 gigabyte laptop, it would get like 60 or 70% of like using it almost all of that of the CPU. So needless to say, you need to have a reliable computer. You know, at least a computer within the last 4 years, I would say.
Yes. And reliable MacBook specifically for MainStage, right?
Absolutely. It has to be a MacBook, Apple MacBook. So if you're not in that boat, not in that world, sorry to disqualify you today.
And if you don't like Apple, feel free to try to make the jump, because I did, and it's great.
Make the jump.
It's like once you get in the bubble, you never go back. So everything just works. This MacBook I have now, I've had it since, all through college. It's worked great.
That's awesome.
So I got no complaints.
I've never had MainStage crash on me, which has been really, really great. It's not using a ton of CPU. Like I said, MainStage is not. Even though the patches might be in depth, some of them, it's really not using a ton of CPU. Your computer and your iPad, you can use it with the iPad too. It's not thinking a ton. Like, we think about DAWs, like your digital audio workstation. When you have Ableton pulled up, your computer is probably thinking twice, doing twice the work, right, to run Ableton as it would MainStage, just because of all the cool features and all the things that it's thinking, all the program language that the computer's having to read in real time is a lot more than what MainStage is thinking. I have Pro Tools crash on me all the time. That's another episode too, talking about software crashing.
Everything nowadays is going to have some kind of software built in anyways.
Right.
I mean, Nord has got the software they use to run that. I mean, the sounds aren't happening natively. It's sounds that are plugged into it.
Right.
So this is literally just the hardware is not going to be the computer, or not going to be the keyboard.
Right.
It's going to be the MacBook.
Absolutely.
It's literally the same exact thing, except it's more versatile and has a screen.
Some people think that software stuff can sound so cheap and bad because of the reputation that GarageBand had 15 years ago, okay? I don't know if anyone had GarageBand 15 years ago, but you only had a few keyboard sounds in GarageBand, and it was just not very good. And I just want to introduce Sunday Sounds a little bit. First of all, Colby, how long have you been playing with Sunday Sounds products?
I think I said 3 years. I may be wrong. Maybe closer to 5.
Okay.
I think I started junior year of college.
Yeah.
We'll say 4. We'll go in between. So like 4 years I've been using it.
I've been using Sunday Sounds for about 8 years now. And so I've been at 8 years. He's been 4 years. This is not a product that we just picked up last week and we're talking about and we're just saying, yeah, cool, use it. Like, it's a product that we have known has worked really well, like within our worship sets. And I love their product. So Sunday Sounds is the name of a company. You can go to sundaysounds.com, check out. And what they do is they sell specific song patches. They sell templates for MainStage. They also sell Ableton things as well, if you're on Ableton, in Ableton world. And the beauty of this is you can find a specific song, like a Phil Wickham song or whatever. Search that song, and most likely, if it's popular enough, it'll have that patch. You can buy that patch, I think, for like $10, $9, and you download it as a zip file. You open it up, takes maybe a minute or two, depending on how fast your computer is, and then make sure it goes into the folder of your MainStage folder where your sounds are. And then you can open up MainStage, and that patch is there. So if you want to sound basically just like the recording of the song that you're playing without having to use a ton of tracks, you can do that. Buy it on Sunday Sounds, and it sounds incredible. And then they have normal sound libraries of like the best type of worship keys and pads and stuff you can look into. But Colby, any last thoughts on MainStage and transitioning from like the hardware only to now using software?
Yeah, I mean, the one word I have for it and will have for it forever is it's incredible.
Yeah.
I personally use the patches that they have for the song-specific patches. I use those in very niche scenarios.
Right.
Sometimes I'll go out with a different band, and we'll be doing a Sunday morning gig somewhere else out of state, and they just have a click track. And that's when this comes in handy. They don't want to use backing tracks. We have all the instruments we need, and then I can fill in the cool organ parts and the synths, all by literally using the song-specific patch and learning exactly where the hand placement needs to be through the YouTube tutorials that they provide.
That's good.
But my favorite part of it is the specific sounds you get, like the simple beauty grand, the grand beyond measure, and you can just tinker with those sounds to make one that you like.
That's good.
You can build your own, or you can use their preset, which is what I use, and I adjust the sounds how I want it to sound.
That's good.
And it works in every single situation.
I love
and it's
that.
phenomenal.
I love that, man. And like you said, there's so much customization you can do. You can adjust, like Sunday Sounds has all these different sounds within their patches, but if you didn't like their synth or you didn't like something else, you could just literally bring it down or turn it off. You can add your delay, add your reverb as you see fit.
Everything.
You know, it's not like, oh, you buy this patch and you're sounding exactly like the recording, you can't change anything. You still have so much individualization, and so many people that build their own patches are like, yeah, I don't want to use someone else's patches because I still want it to be my own. Well, you could still buy someone else's patches and then make it your own with that, you know, after the fact.
Yeah, and you can do that with the song-specific patches as well.
Yes.
I did that with the Reckless Love patch I have. So I was able to go in there real quick, and you can identify every single setting with the mod wheel, what it's activating, and how often that dun 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 is like happening, the pad, the bounce or whatever, and you can change that to just dun dun and something a bit slower and less intense.
That's good.
So it's really cool to just kind of work off of that.
Absolutely. And while you're saying that, that reminds me actually, so let's say you're in more of a megachurch scenario and maybe you have 5 campuses. So yes, it's good for customization, but it's also good for uniformity. So if you need every single campus, all 5 churches to sound the exact same, software is the key, no pun intended, but is the key for you to sounding like very dialed in across all campuses, right? You get 5 iPads or 5 MacBooks, and you load up all your patches, or you have a go-to library, and those keyboardists can just pull up those patches, and everyone's sounding the same. So you don't have, you know, Bob over there in Campus 1 playing whatever kind of keyboard sound, and then, you know, Rich over here in Campus 2 just sounding completely different with like a bunch of organ stuff. You know, everyone can actually sound consistent from campus to campus if you want them to with software, you know.
Right.
Because if you're doing it all on different Nords or different other stuff, you'd have to physically, you know, go in there and dial in those patches at all those campuses. You know what I mean? Software, you're just boom, download it on all the devices, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And even if something does happen to my MacBook where everything just deletes itself, you know, that's happened to people's computers.
Yeah,
I mean, thankfully everything's just kind of saved to cloud now. So, I mean, if something, like if your hardware breaks. That's very difficult to fix.
Right,
you know, you got to unscrew things. You got to figure out exactly what's wrong or take it to the shop real quick. And that's also very stressful if that's your only reliable equipment and you got a gig coming up. But with the software, having everything now so digitized and saved to cloud and all of this and backed up, I never have to worry about it.
That's good.
Because if this thing breaks, I go and I fix it tomorrow or re-download everything immediately.
Absolutely.
And it just works.
Absolutely. So yeah, exactly to Colby's point, if you have an account on Sunday Sounds, you can literally log in if something, you know, went crazy, and you can re-download those same things. I think there's a limit, I think 2 or 3 times or something you can re-download it, but it's all saved to that cloud, which is awesome, man.